I'm investigative journalist Molly Barrows. For years, I've covered the stories that made headlines in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf Coast. Murders, missing persons, and mysteries of all kinds. These cases are far from over for many victims because the full story has yet to surface. Join me for Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier side of the South and expose the lies, greed, and corruption that often weighs down the truth. It's time to turn the tide and get a shot at justice. Hi, I'm Molly Barrows, a longtime reporter in Florida's Panhandle, and welcome to my investigative series, Gulf Coast Confidential, where I dive into the saltier stories that surface in Northwest Florida and all along the Gulf of Mexico. My co-host, as always, is Pam Hill. Pam, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for those who aren't familiar, Pam has an amazing story herself. Her sister was killed by her son, Pam's nephew, on Christmas Eve of 2013, so 10 years ago now. And as a pharmacist and grief and loneliness researcher, she has a unique perspective on a lot of these cases that we talk about here on Gulf Coast Confidential. In this episode, it is certainly a unique one. It's called Don't Blink, the Eyedrop Murder. We're talking about a case out of Pewaukee, Wisconsin that made national headlines. And we do that sometimes, don't we, Pam?
We do, because everything's universal and most of these things, unfortunately, aren't relatable.
Exactly. So that's why we talk about cases that aren't necessarily from the Gulf Coast, but they still hit close to home in their own way. And in this case, there's a lot to learn from the bizarre way this particular woman was killed. She was older. She was also financially vulnerable. And it started, for those who aren't familiar with this case, when a friend of 62-year-old Lynn Hernan, she's the victim, this friend called police to report that the older woman was unconscious and no longer breathing. This was on October 3rd of 2018. Emergency responders found Hernan in a recliner in her living room next to a table filled with prescription pills and what appeared to be crushed medication on her chest. Hernan's friend and caretaker, the woman who was so concerned she called police, Jessie Korcheski, well, she told police she believed Hernan was actually suicidal because she supposedly had debilitating health conditions. And initially, in fact, her death was ruled a drug overdose. But then the results of Hernan's toxicology reports came in about 3 months after her death, and the results showed that Hernan had a fatal dose of tetrahydrozoline. That is the main ingredient in the over-the-counter eye drops that you can find at any convenience store. And this is all according to the criminal complaint. Waukesha County Sheriff's Office then reopened the investigation. However, Korcheski wasn't actually charged and arrested for Hernan's murder until June of 2021. And in fact, she just went to trial this month, November of 2023, and a jury convicted Korcheski, who's now 39, of first-degree intentional homicide as well as theft. So, Pam, there's a lot to break down about this case, I feel like, not just because of the unusual way Lynn Hernan was killed with an overdose of eye drops, basically, but also just the nature of the crime. Right. Essentially, when you break it down, it seems like a case of elder abuse to me. What do you think?
I think so, and it's a case that involves relationships, people doing the behavior they do without somebody checking them, or just a lot of, I would say, like, things that we see happening right before our very eyes.
I know. And unfortunately, I think this woman was living her life right before the very eyes of someone who she thought she trusted, and it turned out she couldn't, because Lynn Hernan was basically a retired hairdresser who, by all accounts, was kind. She was fun, gregarious, very generous person, lived a simple life, didn't have a lot of bills, had saved her money. But she had taken an interest in Jessie Korcheski since she was a teenager and befriended her, along with another young man who actually plays a role in this case as well. Korcheski was acting as Hernan's caregiver, but she also knew she was in the will. And prosecutors say the older woman became worth more to Korcheski dead than alive. In fact, police say the younger woman stole nearly $300,000 from Hernan in the 2 years leading up to her murder. So it seems like Korcheski, to me, took advantage of Hernan's trust and used the fact that she was essentially aging alone. She didn't have any children of her own. She didn't have any family that were still alive. And she used that opportunity to steal from her and ultimately murder her. And even tried to make it look like a suicide. So what did you learn? What were your takeaways when you were following the trial and reading up on this case?
Well, a lot of this is very familiar to me. Being a pharmacist, I see people come in and try They say they're someone's advocate or they're asking about their medicine. And these are red flags to me when it's someone that comes in and they're always asking, when is their pain medicine due? When is their Xanax due? When is this due? And there's certain things you can't discuss with them because of HIPAA. And then, when someone's overly interested in somebody else's medicine and they don't do anything else for them, you're not cutting their yard, you're not taking them shopping, you're not washing their car, but you dang sure coming to the pharmacy all the time. And so sometimes we have to tell people we'll discuss that with the patient only. Now, some people are incapacitated and have power of attorney or durable power of attorney, which we respect that. But in the daily, give and take of business, we see things with people's families and stuff. And matter of fact, at our pharmacy before, we had a lady come in at the last minute telling us she had to send a money order. And she was under such duress, we did a little bit of calling and called her son, and it was a flim-flam from one of those African princes, So, thank goodness our ladies were aware and watching for her because we knew her. But what I learned is that just right on the shelf, I've always known this. If I'm your pharmacist, I will not sell you this. I just won't. Unless...
And you're talking about just over-the-counter Visine, regular...
Right.
The red out
Right, get
stuff.
the red out. The one that has only tetrahydrozoline in it. And let's just call it THC every now and then. THZ every time.
THC. Yeah, THC, that's a whole different thing.
We could call it
Ain't
that.
nobody dying of an overdose of THC.
Well, let's call this THZ.
Yes,
okay,
THC.
Or tetrahydrozoline.
And to that point, so again, talking about how vulnerable Lynn Hernan was and how much she trusted Korcheski, Korcheski knew that she was taking medications, that she was having some health problems. I'm not sure how debilitating they really were. If she was just trying to exaggerate that to the police to try to convince them why this woman may have killed herself. But she did know that Lynn was taking Visine, that she was a regular drinker of vodka as well as some other drinks. She liked to sit in front of her TV and sip her drinks all day. And sometimes she would actually put Visine in her drinks, whether it was vodka or a regular drink, to relax and also help her to have bowel movements because some of the medications that she was taking were causing constipation.
Right.
So she took advantage of that knowledge and basically tried to make it look like it was a suicide that she she put emptied like 6 bottles
of Visine. She put 6 bottles of Visine. Here's a bottle of Visine. Visine comes in a half ounce or 15 milliliters. 15 milliliters is 3 teaspoonsful or a tablespoonful. So if she put 6 of these in there, she's up to 3 ounces, which is about what this is. This is 4 ounces, but it'd be right to there. So with the tetrahydrozoline, and like I said, I wouldn't sell it to anybody unless someone came up to me and I'm interviewing them or asking them, why do you need that? Because what this is, tetrahydrozoline, I'm going to show you with this rubber band right here. Tetrahydrozoline is called a vasoconstrictor. That means it makes the blood vessels tighten up in your eye. Okay? That's what gets the red out. Those open-ended fat blood vessels are what make your eye look red. So if we can pull it back, there you go. It's so simple. But you don't need to do that in your eye all the time. Blood vessels and little capillaries and stuff are like a rubber band. You can only pull it so many times, up, down, vasoconstrict, dilate, so many times. And guess what happens? They burst. These burst and you have permanently red eyes. And then your vision and all kind of other stuff. And by the way, tetrahydrozoline is not out there by itself. We've got Afrin that has oxymetazoline, which is its first cousin. So that people use that to pull back the blood vessels in their nose. So I always make myself available for anybody that wants OTC counseling or recommendations, because as we're fixing to see, even though this is innocuous enough, this was the murder weapon.
I know, a bottle of Visine. It's so crazy to think about. And I want to hear more about why the chemistry of that could cause someone to die, and also why the chemistry causes someone to have a bowel movement. So before I do get into that with you, though, I do want to say it wasn't a total surprise. I had not heard of people using eye drops as a murder weapon before. Right. But, coming up in the Fort Walton Beach area, that's where I graduated high school and went to my first early years of college. And so the people that I ran with, I waited tables. A lot of the people that were in college with me also waited tables or bartended. It's a beach area. There's a lot of tourists, so there's a big service industry. And I learned pretty quickly from just hanging out with some other bartenders and other people in the service industry that they kept a bottle of Visine handy for difficult customers. So if you had somebody that was particularly obnoxious, maybe had been overserved, if you will, and were being overly obnoxious, a couple of drops of Visine would send them to the bathroom and get them on their way and get them out the door.
Right.
I mean, truthfully, that sounds like kind of criminal behavior because you don't really know what somebody's health is. Could they withstand that? I mean, it's not like they're professional dosers, if you will, you know, of Visine. But I had heard that it was used for that before. I was familiar with the fact that it could cause some sort of stomach issue, but I didn't realize that people deliberately took it to have a bowel movement.
Well, the thing is, you if you read any of these kind of books that are mysteries and stuff, or Snapped and that kind of stuff, women have been dropping these drops in people's eggs for a little while. They're like, this man, I want him out of my life right here today. Instead of like getting a divorce, you know, like
a Judy Buono style.
Yes, that kind of thing, because they're smart. But I don't like to call them smart. They're clever. But the way that works is that when you drop this Visine into the body, and eyes is not absorbed to any great extent to the rest of your body, but in their food or drink, then what goes on, that drug acts like an irritant. It goes through your intestines. You have 30 feet of intestines. And so it goes through there and causes almost like a little rake or scratching effect. Ugh. And the bowel says, oh, no, that hurts. And so instead of just having peristalsis where it pushes down and in, it's doing that much too fast. That is exactly the way that X-Lax and Bisacodil and other laxatives works, the ones that we call cathartic. That means it's making something happen. And it's kind of rough. I don't advise that to people right off the bat. When people, like these opioids that Lynn took, she took opioids, she took benzos, she took antidepressants, she was bored, she had all kind of things going on.
Probably not a huge exerciser, I'm guessing. Yeah. Exercise and drinking lots of water can help move those things along. But it's tough when you're older and you're not feeling good.
Well, see, this simulates her little table by her little chair that she sat at.
And for those who are listening and can't see us, tell us a little bit about what you got here.
Okay, well, I've got her little mints, her little smokes. She likes cigarettes. And her little candies and lipstick. She kept herself looking pretty. She's a pretty lady. And her coffee.
Pick them up as you talk about them.
Okay, well, like, there's the smokes right there. You know, people are going to have that.
Marlboros.
And her lipstick there. She liked to keep herself looking pretty.
I love that. What woman doesn't, really?
I know. Well, the defendant in this case didn't.
Yeah.
She's kind of, I'll tell you about her in a minute. She's kind of like, looked like Dr. Evil's girlfriend, you know, to me. And then like some medication there and the Visine drops. And then she'd keep a big old white Slurpee cup on here. And the way that Jessie did, she put those 6 bottles of Visine in this, in a little, like we call a water bottle, you know, keep it around. All this looks innocuous enough. And then when they found her, like you said, the crushed medicine on her chest, that was on a plate on her chest. Okay, so it was staged is my point.
Yes.
It was very much staged. She didn't use technology. She didn't like all that stuff. She didn't know it. She was a boomer like me. And so all this stuff is like this. And so Jessie took advantage of this being every day. People's like, she liked vodka, she liked Visine, she liked Betty Davis, and she liked the Wizard of Oz.
I like all that, except for the Visine. I don't want to drink it.
Yeah, right, exactly. But I mean, like the lady, and she loved her cats. That'll come in.
I love cats too.
Yeah,
God love her. Well, I thought that was heartbreaking too when you and I were talking about it earlier, and the state was like, no, she would never have left her cats. You know, that she wasn't, if she was feeling suicidal, she certainly would have made plans for them.
Right,
she would have left them behind.
Well, so here's her little stuff right here. And I think she had probably told Jessie, see, Lynn was friends with Jessie's mama. And so she was kind of a little extra lady in her life. You know, every child needs extra people loving on them and telling them they're special and stuff like that and helping them. So, you know, basically this lady's got $250,000. She's a pretty simple little lady, and she's already opened the door for, I can just overdose her with Visine.
Right, knowing she's in the will, knowing that she could get some of this money, knowing that she was the caretaker and could easily pour this into her drink. She'd already been caring for her, already had been fixing drinks for her.
Right, and so basically she would come in there and help her a little bit, but what she would do, she would get some money from Lynn, and then she would go out shopping, buying children's clothes. She bought lottery tickets. She liked to gamble.
Did she have children of her own?
I don't know. I don't think so. Even somebody in her little bunch went to Thailand on Lynn's dime.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, so all this is coming on.
So she was just selfish.
Yeah, she was selfish. And I guess she was entitled.
Mm-hmm.
Because the lady was sweet. I don't think she caused a lot of trouble. And I see this in the pharmacy a lot. This lady was 62. I'm 64. And all the conversation about they're like, this elderly lady or this old lady and stuff. And I'm like, wait one second.
I know what you mean. I think about that too. In fact, when I was writing this script and I called it elder abuse, I was sort of reluctant. You know, I was like, older woman abuse? Can we just say older woman abuse?
Right?
Because she really isn't truly elderly. I mean, if 50 is the new 30.
Right, exactly.
Then 60 is not too far from that. Then I guess 60 is the new 40.
I know. I know it's all, I guess, relative.
But to your point, whatever the age, she was a naive person. She was a kind-hearted person. She wasn't real, up to date, if you will, on technology. It didn't come easy for her. She didn't necessarily like it. So all these things made it easy for Jessie to take advantage of her.
And let's contrast that with Jessie, who was a little more
savvy,
smart, like kind of had a set face, and even during the trial, she sat there with like a dour look and stuff. And I remember I was thinking, usually I would think defendants would want to appear likable or softer or feminine or whatever. And she just squared her shoulders up and kept a dour face. And like I said, she kind of reminded me of that little brown-headed lady on Austin Powers, like Dr. Evil's girlfriend,
Yes, and it's funny when she was convicted this week, like we talked about, of first-degree murder. But basically, it seemed to me that she only felt sorry for herself.
She did.
Based on that reaction. She's crying. There's some great pictures that are out there and video of just her expression and everything about her. It reminded me so much, actually, of Brandon, your nephew. Brandon ate a lot. The first time that I met him in person at Florida State Hospital in Chattahoochee, just this overwhelming, I'm a vibe girl, and this overwhelming sense of self-pity, like pathological to your core in a way that I can't even fully wrap my mind around. But he felt sorry for himself.
Oh, yeah. Still does.
And I felt like that was that same vibe with her. And that has to be some kind of, I'm no mental health expert, but it just seems like it's something is so broken within them. They are so selfish, so focused on themselves that they can justify anything they want to do, even murdering their mother, even murdering this older woman who had befriended her. It's all about them. And then they feel sorry for themselves. It's like, oh, you didn't understand. I was right to do this. This was supposed to be for me. How dare you hold me accountable? Boo-hoo-hoo.
Right. And that's exactly what they do, and that's how they sit there. Because, our legal system and our system is that reasonable doubt has gotten a lot of people off. Now, whether they did it or not, some people don't know. But, you could go down this highway a little bit. You get one juror that goes, well, she did it anyway all the time. She put in her coffee a lot. Maybe she is older, 62. I don't think that's all, but she's 62.
Right.
She put too much, in there. And so they could have done that if you just get one, But then I looked at the defense attorney, too, and I thought, I just watched things like that. And I'm like, you're kind of trying, but you're not as smart as the prosecution, it seems like. And there we go back to that likability. And so I was watching, and then, but I have to tell you, I was watching, waiting on the verdict. I thought, watch somebody pop up in here and say, I believe it was suicide.
You truly never know with juries. You really don't.
And so I guess she has some appeals and stuff. But Jessie admitted to putting the 6 bottles. All right, let's talk about that. 6 bottles of Visine is about 3/4 of this that I'm holding up, which is a 4-ounce bottle, into a 20-ounce water bottle. What happens is that your mind goes numb with that because
so she wouldn't have known necessarily anything that was happening?
You can't taste it. And it's odorless and colorless, but she had taken some of it before, so it doesn't sting, but, and it's vodka. So, I mean, it's all the perfect storm. And she doesn't feel good. She's depressed, and this lady's running off. I know. And this lady, when she'd get her taken care of, she'd just steal from her and go out. If you follow the money, because, money to me, money's important, I guess, but I don't like talking about money.
Yeah.
I just hate it. But when especially when people kill somebody over money, but the part of it that you killed someone, they're dead. I don't care if you did it by Visine, tetrahydrozoline, oxymetazoline, a hammer, like they did with Sean Degas, a knife like they did with my sister. It does something to me. And like last night, I was in Walmart, and I had to buy some steak knives. You know, after that with Sharon, I just kind of threw out all my knives because we all had the same butcher block knife type thing in our homes. And I thought, well, I need to buy some. And thank goodness my friend Pat was with me. And I told her, I said, I need to buy some knives. And she said, okay, because she knows me. She knows that's probably setting
she knew it was going to be a trigger.
Yeah. And so I didn't want to go over there and handle them and do everything in the world, but I had to pick some out. So I was not going to buy another butcher block to set on my counter. I think those are bad for people to have in their house, especially the way people's problem-solving skills are these days.
Right.
So, you know.
I don't know what to say. Let me just grab this knife.
And that's what happens.
Yeah.
But I went and I picked them up, and they were like Farberware or something like that. They were a good brand. And usually I'll look at stuff. I just picked some up and then bought them there. But I was paying attention to how I felt. It did something to me. It hurt me. It made me go down a not so great path. And I was having a good day. You know, I could have just said, I'm not going to get them. But this is 10 years later, you know. So I have to move through some of this stuff. But that's what I'm saying. People that have lost loved ones and stuff, like Lynn, she didn't have a whole lot of family, but she had friends that loved her. Now every time they pick up Visine, you know, that hurts them. And as a pharmacist, I watch for people coming in trying to over-medicate people.
Well, it's interesting, too. I think you mentioned that in Wisconsin now they're thinking about adding THZ to the list of drugs that they screen for when they do these autopsy panels.
Right. Because I've read about a case before that where a lady, she killed her husband with Visine. She admitted it too, because she was just tired of taking care of him. And it leaves people in if they're poisoning them over a period of time, it's so disrespectful. It's just so common because they have a bowel movement or they have a void, you know, and people just leave them there because they're mad at them. It's just so disrespectful. And I'm like, how can you do that? That's what I say about all these cases. How could Brandon kill his sweet mama that loved him so much that probably would have died on something else for him? How could this lady kill this other lady that doesn't even have to care about her and make her have an awful death?
I know. All because she just wanted to get her hands on her money.
Right.
Well, at least she did have somebody who was looking out for her, and it seemed like that was one of the things that was helpful. I'm looking for his name, and I don't have it right in front of me.
Anthony Posa?
That's right. Yeah. Anthony Posa. There he is. So he was another, I guess she had befriended him also when he was young. And that, to me, sort of explains, I guess, the gap between, 2018 when she died. 3 months later, they get the report back that said, hey, this main ingredient in eyedrops is the cause of death. And yet she's not charged until 2021. And he was one of those people that was right there going, what's going on with her will? What's going on with her? Why did this go down like it did? I don't know that she was suicidal. I don't necessarily think there was anything that she was trying to kill herself over. I want to know more. And it kept the police, I guess, looking into it.
Exactly. And that's how almost every one of these tetrahydrozoline cases are. And everyone we're going to talk about in the future will be somebody that just won't shut up, which is good. But Anthony Posa, he was in the will. Lynn had $50,000 in a safe deposit box for him, and he knew that, and Jesse knew that. But somehow she took over the will and took over all the administrative type things.
Yeah, because the will had disappeared, right, after she had passed, and he was asking about it.
It always does in tetrahydrozoline cases. It always does.
Interesting.
Because they've thought it out. This is premeditated murder with a tablespoon of eye drops times 6.
So she got his money too, the money that
Anthony
Lynn had set aside for Anthony.
Yeah, she just kind of wasted all the money. Like I said, she didn't care. You can tell she had an addiction problem. She's going to go gambling and buy frivolous things and stuff. I bet
trying to buy friends too, it sounds like, with that trip that she bought for someone.
I bet you dollars to donuts that this lady would have given her anything she wanted. I
know. Except her life. She wasn't trying to give her life, and she took that because she found the easiest way to get to her money. Well, I think this is an interesting case, and she hasn't been sentenced yet, but Korcheski will be soon. And according to Wisconsin law, I think it's mandatory that she be sent away for life, which will be good. You know, I don't think anybody's going to be sorry about that. And like a lot of cases, I'm sure she will appeal, and hopefully this verdict will withstand, because nobody deserves to die like that, and especially when you're so vulnerable. And as you know, and as women, you and I both know we're both unmarried ladies, and you know, I've recently lost my mom. I lost my dad some years back. You also have lost your parents. You've lost Sharon. You have a remaining sister and cousins, and I have family as well. But, you know, life can happen to all of us, and we all lose people along the way. And Lynn didn't even have children. You know, you don't have children. I have a daughter. Who's to say that she doesn't, you know, get wrapped up in her own life one day and check in on me occasionally. And I, you know, I think that'll all be fine. But my point being, it's easy to relate to Lynn.
Yes, it is.
Hernan, and understand that she was in a vulnerable spot, and because she doesn't think like a murderer, and she doesn't think like a greedy person, it never occurred to her that these people that were helping her, that she had been so kind to all these decades, that this particular woman would plot to kill her and actually carry it out. So I don't know if as women we can, you know, I hate to walk through life going cynically, gee, I need a little help. Are you going to poison me? You know, if I ask you to come over and take out my trash or fix my porch or pet my cat, you know what I mean? Like if I need help, I certainly hope you know, we all have to go out on a limb at some point and open our hearts and our homes if we need help. But it seems like, you know, in this sort of a situation, I'd be curious to know if at any point she ever suspected Jesse was doing anything wrong.
I think not. I think she looked at life like glass half full, and she was kind. And Anthony, by the way, he was not nefarious in any way. He was going to enjoy the fruits of her labor, and she wanted him to. And like I said, the thing is, someone just won't quit asking. We can't hear, this is what all of us as we age think about. I can't give every bit of my independence over to someone. That's why you see people push back when someone takes their keys away and says you can't drive anymore. Or they say, you can't go out at dark, you can't see anymore. Or like I had to tell my mom, I said, Mother, quit answering the door just because someone knocks on it. They're trying to sell you something. I will take you to the store to get you anything you want. But my mom was kind and tenderhearted and, you know, say, what do you need? I mean, my parents were born, like my mom was born in 1940. That wasn't quite that long ago. But they just don't think like that. I don't think like that. But I've had to learn. And then as far as like, I want to plan for my family, my nieces and nephews. I want them to enjoy the fruits of my labor. But what happened is this girl got in her business too much. But like I said, as a pharmacist, I see this a lot.
I know.
I see it a lot. And so that's why I ask a lot of questions. And I'm not a popular person with people sometimes about their controlled substances, opioids, stimulants, benzos like Xanax and Valium, because I have to follow the law. But you would not believe, I've been called everything but a child of God as a pharmacist. And I used to cry when I was younger when people would say and be mean to me and stuff. But one day it just hit me that I'm a grown woman. And my own parents never talked to me like that. So you're not going to talk to me like that.
I know.
So you have to set boundaries and stuff. But everybody doesn't have family.
I know. And that's what's so heartbreaking. But it is important to choose our friends carefully and then maybe just don't let them know that they're in the will.
Yeah.
If they are necessarily, you know, hey, why put the carrot out there?
And leave it with a lawyer. A lawyer needs to know. Lawyers are helpful. Lawyers aren't bad guys and bad girls. They're helpful.
They do a lot of good.
Right. And if we had this with a lawyer, an attorney, you can burn it, you can tear it up, you can do whatever you want to with it. You know, then it has to be taken care of. So that's what I'm doing. I tell people, try not to die without a will.
I know.
Because that's all the trouble we had with Sharon. Because nefarious people pop in there and they're going to self-serve. Some of these things are a pretty good fundraiser for people with ill intent.
Yes. And if you're interested in hearing more about Pam's story and you haven't listened before, then check out episodes Mommy Killer 1 and 2, and that is all about the murder of Sharon Adelot. Even though her son was found not guilty by reason of insanity, technically he is not considered a murderer, but in the eyes of the law, he is considered a killer. But essentially, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia. But the parents were divorced. He had been living with the dad, and so all of those details, including a lot of financial mismanagement of money that went to their daughter after Sharon's death that is just unbelievable. So if you want to hear more about that, then check out episodes Mommy Killer 1 and 2, as well as Confessions in the Field House as well. And that's more about Randy Eyedrop, Sharon Eyedrop's ex-husband, and some of the actions that he took that led up to that murder, that played a role, and that certainly played a role in their divorce and what was happening in just a few years that led up to her death. I will say it's interesting, too. At some point, we'll have to do a whole episode just on some of your pharmacy stories, because it is crazy, the abuse that you have to take from addicted people. And that's essentially what it is. It's dealing with people that aren't, socially able to communicate what they want. And then there's those that are able, that are just addicted and they don't care. You know?
And we're there to help them. That's what I have to tell people sometimes. I have to look them right in the eye and say, I am your pharmacist. I am here to take care of you. My life's easier when you get everything you want, but I'm not going to stand here and help you hurt yourself. And eventually, a lot of them get it, even if they're mad, because we see so many cases. I've kind of taken on the Narcan thing now, because each state now has Narcan they can give away. But it's just like, I want to help you. So I wish
know
she
that
would.
You're on their team, right?
I wish that Lynn would have had someone that looked in that could have helped her.
Absolutely. And I think that's what I take away from this is, you know, as a woman who has lost her parents and had to deal with estates and wills and that sort of thing, I think it's important to think to plan ahead, just like she was doing, but maybe you just don't advertise it, or you find somebody involved that's going to be a third party who is in a position of authority, who is an unbiased person. So that way, if there are any, you know, bad characters, if you will, in the mix, they'll know, oh, gosh, I really probably couldn't get away with too much because there's this person that's overseeing everything.
Right. Well, just so you know, you and my attorney got me.
That's exactly right. Find someone you trust, because that's what Pam and I have done, certainly. But it's good advice for all of us. And never give up that tender heart and thinking the best of people. Don't go through life expecting people to do something like this. But in this case, this did happen. It was the worst case scenario. And this is what we're taking away from it. Well, Pam, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. And we thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Gulf Coast Confidential. I'm your host, writer, and producer, Molly Barrows, with co-host and researcher Pam Hill. And a big thanks to director, editor, and production engineer James Roy. Remember, you can listen to more of these Gulf Coast Confidential conversations wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And you can also watch on the Gulf Coast Confidential YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.